Hello friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. Today, obviously, we are doing another one of my seasonal book recommendations for spring. Spring is not my favorite season, but my birthday's in spring, so that makes it a little bit better. I try to make these lists pretty diverse so that there's something on here for everyone. So while the first book I'm going to recommend to you in this video is a young adult Peter Pan retelling, the next book I'm going to recommend to you is a horror set in the middle of winter. We'll get to those in just a second, but I just wanted to say this list is diverse, and I really think that there's something on here that appeals to most people. So as mentioned already, the first book I'm recommending to you is Tiger Lily. This is a Peter Pan retelling, a young adult retelling, and I feel like spring is the time for us to read just like quick little cozy retellings, fantasy inspired, nostalgic books. And while I typically don't love young adult fantasy, I just don't like the way that the storytelling is done a lot of the time, or the messages that they choose to prioritize in those books. This one has a very special place in my heart. It might just be nostalgia. I read this when I was in like 5th grade for the first time. I think this book is old. It was published first in, I'll tell you, hold on, 2012. Okay, I was not in 5th grade. I was older than that, but in my mind, it was like 5th grade. I must have been in like middle school, okay? This book emotionally hits. Like, if you've ever been a teenage girl in your life, I think that this book will emotionally hit for you. We're following Tiger Lily. She is living on the island that Peter Pan lives on, and it's kind of a prequel to when Wendy comes to the island. We're watching this relationship between Peter and Tiger Lily develop, and her kind of fall head over heels for him, and then she is obviously betrayed when Wendy arrives because Peter becomes obsessed with her. And it's kind of her inner monologue about the value of love versus betrayal. I'm making this sound a lot darker than it is. This is young adult. It's not super dark, but she definitely like goes through it, and I think it's a relatable experience for any young woman. We love to see a very famous kind of atmosphere or setting be told through a different lens, and I just loved everything that this did. It's also super quick, less than 300 pages, and I would just highly recommend this to you. I feel like it's kind of been making a resurgence lately. I've actually seen it around on social media and stuff. So if you've like maybe heard of this and are wondering if you should pick it up, I think this is your sign to read this. Okay, next I'm recommending Near the Bone by Christina Henry, which is a recent read of mine. I don't even think I've talked about it yet on my channel. Maybe I have, but I don't think I have. Obviously, also, as a precursor, I just want to say all of these books were either 4.5 or 5 stars for me, so if you've been watching my channel for a while and we have similar reading tastes, I think you could really like all of these, potentially, maybe. This book is set in dead winter, and I know that that does not fit the seasonal parameters for most of us, but if you live in a place like I do, where it is winter until like May or June, and the temperatures are freezing, and you're still getting snow, and you want a quick read that just thrills you and delights you, maybe delight isn't the right word, but anyway, I would highly recommend Near the Bone. This is a kind of, I would say, a pretty traditional horror as far as the aspects of general horror go. I've seen a lot of people comparing this to Bird Box because the kind of creatures in here, we never really get a good picture, we never get a really good feel for what they actually look like. It's this like looming sense of terror, but we never actually really get a full idea of what's going on. If you like a secluded, snowy atmosphere and high stakes and just lots of anticipation, I would highly recommend this. It was so fun to read. It was easy and quick. Again, I feel weird like saying that this was fun to read because obviously there's some very dark topics being discussed in here, but I just think Christina Henry is a wonderful writer, a wonderful storyteller, and she's great at instilling that anticipation in you of like what's gonna happen next. Are they gonna make it out alive? Like what's going on? The actual plot of this book is we're following Maddie. She is in an abusive relationship with her husband. They live alone in this cabin on this mountain that's like very secluded and out of the way, and there are some strange things starting to happen on the mountain, and she gets increasingly concerned. It appears that there are like animals being killed by some type of creature that's very large and very scary and very intelligent. Maddie's got to find a way to figure out how to, 1, get out of this abusive relationship, and 2, not get killed by this creature when she runs away. So that's this one. It was really good. It was a wonderful read. And if you like horror and you haven't read this, I would highly recommend it. It's great for that still snowing outside spring. On the opposite end of the spectrum, I'm going to recommend you Book Lovers by Emily Henry. Emily Henry writes great books for spring in general. She has a new one coming out. I can't remember what it's called. Is it Funny Story? Is that the new one that's coming out in April, I think? So I would also recommend that, even though I haven't read it, but I've never had like a hard flop from Emily Henry. I don't even traditionally read romance at all, but all of Emily Henry's books have been like above a 3.5 star for me, which are all wins in my book. Book Lovers is my favorite one, and it's the only one that I own as a physical copy. This is very light, silly, goofy, and I loved the way that the characters' relationship developed throughout the story. We are following our main girlie. Hold on, I haven't read this in a while. I don't remember her name. The plot of this book is kind of hard to explain, like the general premise, because there's a lot going on. But basically, Nora and Charlie both end up in the same town that they go on a vacation to. They don't go there together. Nora goes there with her sister, who's pregnant and has been like begging for some time away before her baby comes. And Charlie just happens to show up there. The issue is Nora and Charlie don't like each other, except they actually do, obviously, because they fall in love. They're both working on their respective literary careers, and they have a really interesting banter. They keep running into each other over and over again, and finally they kind of overcome those differences and start to get to know each other, which obviously leads to love and romance. This book is funny. It's actually made me giggle out loud a couple times, and I just really appreciate everything that this book did, and I highly recommend it to you. I know a lot of people that love Emily Henry. This is like not their favorite book of hers. So if you like a more traditional romance, I think beach read would be the way to go for you, maybe. But if you don't like the traditional contemporary romance, but you do like a rom-com, I think this one should be your choice. I know everyone and their mom has already read these books, but might I recommend to you Something by Sally Rooney? Something by Sally Rooney. All of her books are incredible sad girl lit fic, but they're done in a way that is just so good. I'm going to recommend you Conversations with Friends because I feel like this is the most like spring-like atmosphere, although I also read Normal People in spring and it was like the most perfect time in my life to ever read a book. I really do think that Normal People is probably like my top 2 favorite books of all time. I would have to reread the other one that's up there to know for sure, but this might hold the #1 spot, and it's been up there for many years now. Conversations with Friends is also probably in my like top 10, top 15 books of all time. Sally Rooney writes these really intricate female narratives where we are not actually living in this perfect world where the woman meets the guy and they fall in love and they get married. No, most of the time the relationships in her books are quite disastrous or unhealthy, and we're just following the girly pops in the stories that are dealing with those emotions and who they are and finding self-identity. Like I said, sad girl lit fic, right? Sally Rooney is the poster child. If you've read Sally Rooney before, I'm assuming it was this one. If you have, and you haven't picked up Conversations with Friends, I would recommend that you do so. If you love sad girl lit fic and you haven't read Sally Rooney at all yet, I would actually recommend that you start with Normal People. I think that this one just packs a stronger punch, but I think that this one is also a little bit more polarizing as far as how people feel about it. I know a lot of people hate this and a lot of people love this, and there's not very many people in the middle. Conversations with Friends, I think, is a little bit easier to like, although our main character in this book is not very likable herself. She has a lot of issues and you can just see her like being stupid, but also I think if you're a young woman, you can find pieces of yourself in her. Pick up one of these if you haven't read any of them yet. Preferably one of these two. I think these two are stronger than this one, but I still give this one 5 stars, so it's objective. And my last book recommendation comes from a book that was just published a couple weeks ago. I'm sorry, there's cat hair all over it. I'm cleaning it off. Listen for the Lie by Amy Sintera. I don't love reading super dark, long, twisty thrillers in the spring. Like, my brain likes to read easy stories in the springtime. And this was such an easy thriller to get into. The video that went up last weekend had this book in it, so if you want more full, extensive thoughts on it, you can go watch that. I'll link it in the description, or maybe I'll tag it as well. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'll make it easy for you to find is what I'm saying. This book is a very unserious, sarcastic thriller. Our narrator is like so over it, and she is blunt and goofy. This thriller is not serious, and if you like a serious, very twisty thriller, this one's not for you. But if you like to giggle and you like reading podcasts and thrillers, this is one of the best formatted thrillers with a podcast insert that I've ever read. You're not left wanting more of the podcast because it really is in there like every single chapter. But the formatting was great, the podcast was good, the characters were goofy and silly. There's a relationship with a grandma in here that I really appreciate because I feel like grandparent relationships in literature really just are something special. The podcast host himself was made to be not super likable, but likable to read about. And overall, I just really enjoyed everything that this did. This is the first like 5-star thriller that I've read in a long time. Technically this was more like 4.5 stars, but I'm gonna round up because it really just did everything right for me. I don't own a copy of this, but I also want to say First Lie Wins is a great thriller that is very twisty. It's also very recently published. I think it was in February that it came out. So if you're looking for a darker, more twisty thriller, that one is a great choice, but this one really did it for me and I had such a fun time. So I promised you this video would be short. I hope you found something to read. I know it's always a little risky when I film these videos and like I recommend really popular books that probably most people have already read, but I feel like a lot of these books besides this one are old enough now that like maybe not a lot of people would have read them, and we can get a little resurgence going. I hope you found something that you want to read this spring, and thanks so much for watching. I will see you with another video soon. Bye.